So I got my dream job. What now?
But before we get into it, I really want to set the scene. Much better. So what does it even mean to have my dream job? So before I get into the nitty gritty, wait, this button is open. My stripper? This work is real work, amen. So before I even get into what I mean, we have to go back to the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean 2011. It's when I first started watching YouTube, when I first started falling in love with influencers, and just 2.5 years later, I started filming videos on my own. I think the exact date is April 7th of 2014, which was my first video. And you know what? Just for this video, I'll leave it unlisted so you guys can check it out. But anyways, I grew up loving creating content. I grew up loving being in front of the camera, falling in love with being a creator, learning what it's like to engage an audience, and just like being personable. And I did that for 12 years. I grew up editing videos and filming videos, conceptualizing them, storyboarding them. And it's what I always loved to do. So because of that, I had 12 years of unprofessional but deep loving experience for content creation, video editing, and storyboarding, right? Well, before I got my dream job, we have to go back to December of 2023. I was just closing out my internship at Yelp, and I needed a job quickly. Yelp was only paying me, guys, they were paying me $400 a month. And at this time, I was already 23. So they were paying me $400 a month, and I needed a full-time job. So in 2023, I got rejected from 14 final rounds. 14 final rounds, guys. Oh my God. Some were less explained reasons, and some were I was just too good. In the summer of 2023, I interviewed for Grubhub. I got to the final round of Grubhub, and it just didn't work out, right? It was an internship to full-time role, and 6 months later, I see a job listing for a social media associate role at a company, and I got the job directly through connections. That's just the truth. And in all honesty, I hated it. I was grateful for the opportunity. I was grateful for my first full-time salary gig, but it sucked so bad. Yeah, I thought because I loved making content, I loved social media, and I really realized I hated it. But even when I worked at Yelp as a social media intern to contract, I loved making the videos. I loved editing the videos. I loved the creative aspect of it. Honestly, I was super depressed, and I had just gotten all of the worst year of my life in 2023. I was really optimistic for 2024, and it just wasn't the vibe. It wasn't the vibe. It wasn't the vibe. Not only that, I was also having one of the biggest health issues in my entire life. One day, I missed a really important meeting, and I want to tell you guys the story of how I ended up quitting, but I don't know if I legally can yet. I'm going to give myself like a year, but I will share that story at some point because it's actually really interesting. But anyways, I decided after 4.5 months that I'm going to put in my 2 weeks. I quit my job, and I had no plans to go back to corporate. I had no plans to work corporate 9 to 5 ever again. I decided I was going to go into freelance editing and just wing it, and I was going to move out of New York and explore an aspect of my life that I've been putting on hold for a really long time. So to say all this to say, the story of how I got my dream job is really interesting. It was my last day at work, and I get a ping at midnight the day before my last day from someone I had interviewed with and got to the final round to in the summer of 2023, in the same exact time I was interviewing for Grubhub. She had remembered me over a year later, which is insane. And she had reached out to me for a role. It was for a video editing role. And I was like, no, I'm not going to take it because I just got out of this. I was in like a health scaries moment. And so, but I don't reject it just yet. I'm just like, let me kind of leave it in the inbox and kind of figure it out. And so I did. I left it in the inbox for a week. I hit her back saying I was busy. And then I had asked her just some questions about the role because I was like, let me just know if it wasn't for me that I was going to offer it to somebody else that I knew had a really good experience and it might have been a great opportunity for them. So I reach out, and then she kind of presents to me the ideas and like what the role actually is. And I was like, oh, this sounds kind of interesting. So I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll just apply. I interviewed with Mike, who is now one of my closest coworkers I've ever had. And the interview goes well. I do a project and it goes well. And then I did the final interview, which I bomb, and I bomb it so hard. This is the worst I've interviewed in my entire life, and I still got the job. And I say all this to say that 1, connections are great. 2, I'm grateful someone finally saw me for my experience and my worth, and less of the way I present to them. And that was the first time I was seen as a talent and not as a almost not diversity hire, like a what is it called? Personality hire. And I was really grateful. So I did the job, and I am having the best time of my life. So my job is I'm a full-time video editor. I edit full-time all the time, 24/7. That's kind of why I gave this whole backstory, because editing has been such a consistent, and I am obsessed with it. I am obsessed with it. I am passionate about it. I love it. I never, ever, ever get tired of editing. Like, I might feel fatigued at the end of the day, but I'm ready to get back up and edit again. It's like truly my dream job. And like the best part is like my team is truly amazing. Like, I couldn't have asked for a better group of people. I have freedom, I have creativity freedom, I have time restraint freedom. It's just the perfect job. But like, what now, right? Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? What's next? Is something next? Well, kind of. Having a dream job means you have a job, which means it's work, right? Work is work. And work sometimes sucks because it's a job. And I think one of the biggest things for me was like, I finally got the job that I wanted. I finally got the job that pays well. I travel all the time for it because I'm also a videographer, and I get to edit all day and I work fully remote. And it really is, for most people, their dream job, and for me, it's my dream job. But it also means that there's so many things that come with doing your passion as your full-time career. And the biggest thing for me is doubt. I get so scared that my creativity and that my output is not good enough. I've been editing for 12 years, and the reason I've never been consistent on YouTube and the reason I stopped on social media a lot is because I am truly so self-critical about my content. And I think it's really hard when a company is paying you thousands of dollars a year and putting hundreds of thousands of dollars behind your ads and your organic videos. And so there's this pressure that you have to outperform the masses to be deemed as a fruitful employee. And that's a really big mental taxation that happens when you're working for your dream job, because there's so much more on the line, especially as a creative. And because the creative field is very volatile, the first to get laid off, the first to get converted from full-time to part-time, and some of the most underpaid departments in corporate America, there is this nervousness. And because of that, you almost have to develop this detachment from your job in some sort of way, just in general, right? But like, your job shouldn't be your life. But even as a creative, I feel like you're so passionate because you love it, but you almost have to be detached, because at the end of the day, you have to remember that you're just a cog in the machine, right? You're just a number that's producing numbers. When you're in creative, because you have so much more to prove, you can only do what you can do. And I think that for me has been the most difficult part, right? Like, having a dream job has volatility, right? I love it, but I feel like the mental burden that comes with performing can really skew your experience when working in a creative field and or working your dream job. And because of this mental load that you take on, you're almost underpaid in the process, right? Because your brain is never off. You always feel like you can do better. And I feel like that can really affect your mental health, and you can't really put a price on that, but the price that they do put on it is a lot lower than the price that they would put on someone who works less hours and does less work. Anyways. Let's scoot you guys in a little closer here. How's that? Is that better? And while that's pretty much the only major woe of working at my job, there's also the startup woes. We're a startup. We're a very small team of 5. I think we're expanding to 6 by the time this video is out, which means you don't get to pick your mentors. And it also means you have to take on more jobs than what you're used to, right? Like, I got hired on as a video editor, and now I fly out every 6 to 8 weeks filming content and being on set, which is awesome and dope, but it's not something I'm mentally prepared for or signed up for initially. And I love my job, and I seriously, I'm not complaining. If you're watching this, I'm not complaining. I love my job, but it's not what I expected, right? Because of that, there is that feeling of sometimes being stretched way too thin, or more thin than you thought you would be, because you have more you have to take on. And you also don't really get to choose mentors, right? Like, everyone's working all the time because it's a small team, and so you don't really have anyone guiding you. You don't really get thrown into training. You kind of just pick up where you are, which is nice because you get to have so much creative output, but it can sometimes feel a little bit weakening because there's so much that you feel like is on your shoulders. And you know, having your dream job, especially when it's a creative field, and startups are more willing to invest more upfront money because they know that marketing is so important, you're going to have to encounter that a lot when it comes to working creative field in a startup. Even if it's not a creative field, working in a startup, and even if it's not a startup, working for a big company or a FANG, there's going to be that element of, I love this so much, but am I getting enough out of it? And am I putting enough in, right? But I say all that to say, I love my job. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I don't know if I'll ever leave. If I ever leave, it's because I'm leaving corporate. It's not because I'm leaving the best job that I've ever had. But while I have my dream job, I also want to give you guys some tips to get yours. All right, so tip number 1, go for that dream job. even if it seems unrealistic. Trust me when I say this, people believe in you more than you think. And I know the job market is tough, but I really use myself as an example. The first internship I ever got was for the largest ad tech company in the world. And the very first internship, I had zero experience. And I reached out to a guy on LinkedIn saying that it's cool that he went to my college and that he started this really cool program at the company. And a month later, I was their first and only to this day intern for that intern role. My contract got extended 3 times, and it was truly the second best job I've ever had. You have to be unrealistic, you have to be delusional, and you have to believe in yourself. Imposter syndrome is very real, but in the creative space, you're fighting tooth and nail to get the job of your dreams. And I think that allowing yourself to be like, you know what, I can do this. I might not have 3 years of professional editing experience, which is exactly what my job asked for, but I do have the drive, the want, and the grit to make sure that I can turn my experience that I do have to fit the corporate setting and the corporate company. And that kind of goes into the second point, which is have a resume or a portfolio that reflects your experience, even if it's not professional. One of the biggest things I tell people is like, everything you do matters. Every piece of content you create, every piece of art you make matters. And I'm really passionate about this. Do it for cheap. Do work that doesn't provide much value, but allows you to have art that speaks to your performance, speaks to what you love to do, and speaks to your capabilities. If I didn't do YouTube for 10 years, and if I didn't fight for my job at Yelp, which I also got with no experience, and I reached out to someone on LinkedIn, by the way, if I didn't do that, if I didn't make little Instagram videos and have one little viral TikTok, I probably wouldn't have gotten this job, right? She remembered me, she reached out to me, but if I didn't have any experience whatsoever, what does that mean? Right? And so I built up my portfolio. I put my portfolio to fit a marketing theme, and I'll link it down below for you guys to use it if you like. And then I started making more videos. I started reaching out to free clients. I started reaching out to creators, and I started doing freelance work. And all of those little things added up. It allowed me to build up my portfolio, my resume to a place that got me a full-time job and now gets me freelance gigs, at least 3 new clients a month. And so be passionate, be gritty, be assertive, and be confident in your work, because that is the only way you're going to be successful. And now my portfolio looks like my Mount Avenue company, and I'll link it down below so you guys can check it out and hire me for editing if you like. But that's what my portfolio looks like now, and comparing it from my first, it's night and day, but both of them are still powerful and wonderful and did the job when they needed to. The third one, and what a lot of people don't like to hear, you have to be good at interviewing. I'm sorry. There's 2 ways to be good at interviewing. The first one is to be a good interviewer, right? Like, say all the right answers and ask all the right questions. But the second is to show them your personality enough that they know that the answers to your questions have a deeper meaning. Person number 1 would say, I started editing because I fell in love with YouTube when I was 11 years old, and it became a passion of mine that never left. Person number 2 would probably say, oh man, editing, what an amazing experience it has been so far. It's my life. It's what I've loved the most, and I can't believe how long I've been doing it, and I'm so proud. And while answer number 1 feels a little bit more concrete, answer number 2 shows the passion and the drive, and they're both beneficial and they're both useful and they both work. But I really have realized that answer number 2, even though it feels a little bit more loose, even though it feels a little less professional, it also makes you more human. And nowadays, I saw a study that companies are looking for culture. If you fit the culture, if you show them that you have the culture, you show them you have the grit, sometimes that is enough. And sometimes the answers to your questions, they do matter, but they matter a little bit less because you're showing who you are and what you're passionate about. And so practice interviewing, practice with your friends, practice with your loved ones. Yeah, just be a good interviewer and believe in yourself when you're doing so. And ask good questions. And I'll link down my interview questions because I actually think this is the biggest reason I got my job at Yelp, because I asked my recruiter, this is such a funny story, but I asked my recruiter, what's a piece of art or media that has changed your perspective in life, whether it's in the short term or long term or something along those lines? And she said Taylor Swift. And this was like when Taylor was like Midnights had just come out, right? Like a month or 2 before. And I was a big fan of Midnights, so I used that to my advantage. And we talked about Taylor Swift for 10 minutes past the interview time. And that is the reason I got the job. I'm not joking, because in the call, she was like, you know what, Jeremy, I'm going to advance to the next round. I can't make it up. Ask great questions. Make people feel special, make them feel important. And if you guys want like a really true interview guide, I will make a video about it. But yeah, I'm really good at interviewing. I'm not going to lie. So you should be too. And the last one, I'm gonna be honest with you, and this might seem impossible, but like, make the job yourself. When I was working in my first internship, there were layoffs, but initially we were talking about transferring me to full-time for a role that had never existed. We realized my potential and what I was capable of, and we really try to skew it to fit how I can best better a company. And a lot of times companies are more than willing to hire on people that provide value, especially value that they don't know they need. And so whether that means tailoring your portfolio to add elements to a role that are not initially there, and or creating a portfolio that shows a gap in the company's bottom line or their marketing strategy, or just from their employees when you look at how many employees they have and the roles that they take on. Sometimes creating that dream role will get you the job, and not only that, will give you so much more reputability because you built this from scratch. And I really do believe that this is very, very possible, especially if you're already within the company and you're able to kind of sell yourself. And I think at the end of the day, like getting your dream job, having your dream job, keeping your dream job, it's all about selling yourself, showing up for yourself, to showing up for the company. So would I recommend going for your dream job? Yes, I would. But sometimes I say it's only for the start. And I say this because if you want to stay at your job forever, I love that. I fucking love that. But I think sometimes when you get your dream job, you learn a lot of things. You learn about who you are. You learn that things will change. Like I initially thought I was going to be a social media superstar, and it turns out I hated working in social. And so your dreams change, your perspective changes, and sometimes you want something bigger, sometimes you want something smaller, and sometimes you don't want it at all. And so I say go for your dream job, learn, see how you feel, decide if it aligns with what you're looking for, and then kind of go from there. I think you can never go wrong for chasing what you love, and then figuring out how that looks like and if it fits into your life, and if it does, in what ways. And so I'm gonna end this off by saying good luck. I'm sending you guys so much positivity. I know this job market is super tough, but you guys are gonna make it. It's all gonna work out. Thank you guys for watching. Stay safe, and shout out to my wooden spoon that needs to be retired, so I'm using her to hold up this Rode mic. Yeah. See you guys later. Stay safe.